Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Nag. I am the city councilor here in Ward 1, which is the west end of the city. And I've been doing a number of conversations with business leaders, community leaders, different organizations that operate both in Ward 1 and really across the city. And today we're chatting with Bill Bowers, who is on the LaPerle Community League. And Bill has been doing incredible work throughout this pandemic of keeping the community engaged, being just this beacon of positivity in the area. And I'll let him introduce himself. And so go ahead, Bill. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Andrew. And before we talk about me, let's talk about you a little bit. I can't imagine having a more engaged person handling our concerns and our questions with the city. So thanks for everything you're doing socially to keep everybody feel connected.
Oh, thank you. That's the least I can do.
Oh, no, that's great.
Yeah,
I mean, you're approachable and when you do that. So, okay, enough about you?
Yeah, enough about me. Let's hear about you. This is what it's all about.
All right. Well, my name's Bill Bowers, and I'm a member of the Community League here in LaPerle, as you mentioned. Our AGM is coming up, and I'm putting my name forward to be the president of the LaPerle Community League. Through this fun that we've had since March, which we will always remember, I think the biggest challenges were to find different ways to keep everybody feeling positive and engaged and to know that you're part of something bigger. And I really leaned a little bit on Diana Steele, who's part of the Crestwood Community League and acting president for now. And she goes on video every day, and she's really been motivational for the neighborhood there to keep everybody connected. And I saw her doing that, and I thought, well, what can I do for my neighborhood? So one of the initiatives, if I can speak to it,
please.
I did, there's been a circulating window decorating challenge that was circulating right at the beginning, where every few days or every 3 or 4 days, there was one or another one that somebody had circulated a PDF on Facebook. So I decided to take it a step further and make it a daily window decorating challenge, which now has fallen off because it's a lot of work. I never realized it. But I took that a step further and thought I would do a book reading every day. And I called the segment Books with Bill. And I would read a book that kind of fit the theme of the window decorating challenge. And it didn't always fit, but it was always a book that I enjoyed reading. And all kids' books. I haven't gotten into any novels yet for the adults, but I probably won't do that on here.
That's fair.
Yeah, well, you never. If you have a book suggestion, though, Andrew, that's probably okay too.
I'll get one to you. I'll try.
So so we found. I found the window decorating was really good because it got people out there walking, and I had parents asking me, "Well, what's tomorrow's challenge?" Because it's part of their regime. They'll do their schoolwork, their art session, which is going to be the window decorating challenge, and then they'll go out for a walk and exercise to see everybody's art. And we've had lots of great feedback about how that's working. And then the Books with Bill, once the parks got opened again, I ran into a few people that came up to me, and they were a little shy, because they wanted to say thank you. And I said, well, that's great. It's my way of staying sane, I said, because I needed to do something for me, and that was for me.
Well, and I appreciate, while it might have been for you, it was a huge boost and has been a huge boost to everyone in the community, and even just outside of the community. I love getting my notification each time you're going live. I don't get to watch them all live, but I love getting to watch them, and I think it really has added and helped bring the community together during a time in which it was hard for us because none of us could go out. And yes, some of the rules have been lifted now, so we can get out a little bit more, but there's still not the same type of connection as we had previously. So Books with Bill has been a fun way of keeping neighbors engaged in the city. So I was curious, and you talked a little bit, I think, already about how you've been responding to this, because again, we are in this very unique situation. I think the other question that maybe leads into this now is that, you've been doing this sort of immediate response. As we start thinking about the next steps and what we might want to do differently, are there different things that you feel like the LaPerle Community League and maybe community leagues as a whole might do differently in how they deliver services and programs because of this?
Well, that's a good question. I think the big thing is looking back as a community league and what our goals are and what we hope to see our community grow into. And I talked to quite a few long-term residents that have lived here and built their houses here, and they talk about how they've seen block parties, and they'll see all of these social gatherings and the connectivity, I guess, and how that's dropped off over the last while. And I just have a feeling of the more connected we are as a community, the stronger we are as a community. And I think if there's ways that we can build engagement socially. Now, unfortunately, as you mentioned, with COVID, we're having to find new ways to connect, and through the Books with Bill and the window decorating. And we've definitely done a lot more online through Facebook, through Nextdoor, and just getting our messages out there. And we have a lot of people in our community that have taken that to the next level. And, in terms of people that do face painting as a business. Now, face painting as a business is a very personal thing, but she's releasing a daily face painting challenge, if you will, and showing her kids with certain face paint that matched usually the book or the window decorating. It was pretty cool. But there's another lady that's actually put together a directory of LaPerle based businesses. So we have Avon and Arbonne and roofing companies and landscaping companies, and all of that are LaPerle based businesses, so that we can support our own, and support that small base. So I think to answer your question in a long way around that I did, as a community league, we have to look at doing things that don't involve going to our building and doing things more virtually, I guess, until restrictions are lifted more.
Yeah, and I think something I've been hearing is that even when restrictions start to get lifted, I think you're going to see a lot of communities not stop doing that, but they'll do that as well as getting back to some of the other things that they've been doing and that they've done in the past, because we've seen new people get connected into their neighborhoods, into the community league system, who maybe hadn't in the past because really there was nothing else to do. They were inside their home, and so they were looking to, they went on Facebook and found, oh, my community league has this page and they're doing these great things. I can get more involved. I can stay in touch with people. So I think there are opportunities around how we're going to deliver services and programs in the future in the community league world as well. So I can't wait to see how that continues to evolve.
Well, and Andrew, before you go forward,
sure.
On that same note, and I know this will probably broadcast after our AGM, but on June 7th, we're hosting our AGM. And it's the first time we've ever done a virtual AGM. So I'm sure there'll be challenges that way, but I am so looking forward to doing that, because the engagement we've had socially, I believe we will have more people attending that AGM, and maybe once this broadcast, I can update you. But there'll be more people attending it because they can do it from the comfort of their home. But they're also connected already since March. Since we've been doing this, we're talking about community. And so I selfishly have been doing these things to invite more people to become part of our board and to volunteer, because having more people involved makes the work a lot easier.
Absolutely. It makes such a difference. Before I was doing this role, I served on my community leagues. I was with the Metal Art Community League and Jasper Park Community League. And I had the opportunity to engage, and have since, of course, had the opportunity to engage with community leagues across all of Ward 1 and actually beyond. And you see those leagues that can attract, we have some community league boards that are made up of like 20 or 25 people. And the amount that they can get done and engage and bring people together is so impressive. And because they have so many people, it's not like they have to work and dedicate hundreds of hours a month to be able to do those things when you have so many people joining. And so I do hope, and if this goes up before that day, please make sure you're tuning into the virtual AGM. And if it goes up after, I hope you've had a chance, if you didn't get a chance to join live, to make sure you are reaching out, because you can still participate. You don't have to join up right at the AGM. You can join up anytime after an AGM. So thanks for mentioning that.
Absolutely.
The other thing I think I wanted to just ask, and maybe sort of combine these questions here, as and I think we already started touching on it a bit around what we might envision for the future, but the city is developing our relaunch strategy. We're thinking about how we reimagine what we do as a city, and supporting all Edmontonians in the city. And I'm wondering if you've seen in what's been released so far and what's been talked about so far, do you see community leagues represented in those conversations? And if you do, that's wonderful. And if not, I still want to hear about that. In fact, I would add, even if you have seen that, are there gaps? Are there things that are missing so far from what we've been talking about? And I note that, you know, we're only really 10 weeks into this at the time of recording this. And so, you know, we're going to continue to adapt and adjust, but it'd be nice to hear if you're hearing things that you think, you know, the city really should be focusing on this as well, because we've got a lot of work to do.
Well, you know what, probably the biggest thing I would feel like there was a disconnect would be between the provincial government and the municipal government in terms of relaunching parks and playgrounds, because the province said, hey, the parks are open tomorrow. And the community leagues, we knew nothing about it or what our role would be. And you and I had conversations the day before the park was supposed to open about how it looked. And so I think, if anything, having a little more heads up, and I know municipally, you're only getting so much heads up from the provincial government. And so it's easy for us to say, oh, it's the city. But I recognize that you can only do so much, but from a community league standpoint, I do feel like there was a little bit of a disconnect with that particular relaunching. I can't speak to others. I know businesses are open, patios are open, with all of their different rules that are involved there. But
yeah, you weren't the only one. Let's put it that way. And because we found out the same day everyone else did, when the province announced it, we found out at the exact same time. I think we were actually in the middle of our emergency advisory committee meeting as council when we started getting some notifications saying, oh, the province announced all playgrounds and outdoor courts are opening up. We thought, well, that's great, because we know people are eager to it, but we didn't have anything at that point written that said, here's what's expected if you're doing that reopening. And so I know we've shared feedback with them saying, yeah, like, we get it. You're also, like, this is changing hour by hour still. We are still in the middle of a pandemic. We sometimes forget that piece. And so I understand the province is doing this just as the federal government. We're all trying to react as quickly as possible, but as safely as possible. And so having that coordination is really important. So no, it's a great point that you raised, because it's all of us together working on those pieces.
Well, and I recognize too that the community leagues, like from the top down, I guess if you look at the city as being the top or the province as being the top for communication, the community leagues, you know, we get our information from you. As our counselor, and you get your information from the city, and it trickles down. So I think having such open channels to communicate with you and the city, it can only help us in the future.
Absolutely, yeah. That's the key thing, and you know, the one thing that's it's so important with that, because when I look at my time before I was on council on my community leagues, and you know, I know now, being in this role, that the budgets that we have as individual councillors are very different than what provincial MLAs have or federal MPs have, because you'll often see your member of parliament or your MLA actually send out like a mail out to every household. We don't have the budget for that. So I rely a lot of times on the community leagues. I'll post something on my social media, on my website, And thankfully, we've got such a great group of community leagues who will often then share that to their pages as ways to try to get information out, because there are 80 some thousand people that live in Ward 1, and it's hard to reach every one of them because
It's
you
true,
can
yeah.
attend every community event ever possible, and you're still not going to reach everyone. So it's nice to have that constant dialogue. And I know throughout this pandemic, we've been engaging with community leaders in the ward, and we've sort of been joining a group video call every couple of weeks just to chat about best practices from other spots, and learning from one another, and just staying in the loop. So it's been great to have. And again, I thank you for joining those calls, because it's been great to be able to make sure that message has been being shared.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. It's nice to feel as part of a bigger community, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I think we've covered a lot so far. I think the one thing I want to check in on before we wrap up is just a little bit around not just how people can stay connected. So not only how can LaPerle residents stay involved with what you're doing, but I mean, the beauty of our system, of our community league system, is that we have people who live in neighboring communities who still want to be informed, who want to follow along with work. And I know through my time is that there will be plenty of times where one community is hosting an event, and you will definitely get people coming in from other neighborhoods. And I love that. I've always enjoyed that part of it. So how can people stay on top of the work that you're doing, and the work that the LaPerle Community League is doing?
Sorry, I got interrupted there. What was your question?
I was just curious how people, regardless of where they live, whether it's in LaPerle or even in the West End, or even broadly as the city, how can they stay informed of the work that's happening in LaPerle, and the work, frankly, that you are doing as a community leader? Because I think a lot of people can learn from the work that you've been doing during this pandemic, and they might want to take that back to their leagues. So how can they stay informed of that?
Well, very easily. A lot of what we're going to do and what we're doing is on Facebook, our website, Nextdoor, all of that. Online, but they can call me if there's any board members, other community leagues that want to chat about what we're doing. I'm an open book, and I'm very happy to share our successes. But I also want to learn from your successes. I want to. I think the community leagues and EFCL is really good at supporting a collaborative approach to everything. So in terms of that, anybody wants to reach out to me, my email is bill@billbowers.ca, or my cell phone number, 780-995-1973. I'm very happy to chat with you if you had questions or ideas or suggestions. And I think going forward, especially this year, because our AGM, our terms are 1 year. So for the next year, I'm going to go gung-ho here in LaPerle and try to build that community, and all the people that have come forward to try and that want to join our board. We have people that would like to form a crime prevention team. Not necessarily people that can attend all the meetings, but that's okay. We are looking for many people for many different smaller positions to make part of a bigger board.
I love it.
It's going to be great. I'm so looking forward to what this year holds for LaPerle, and the engagement we've gotten, the positive, I guess, of the engagement that we've gotten because of being home and socially. It would have taken a lot longer for us to get to this point. So we'll see what the next year looks like. And talking about big events where it drew people in from other communities, every year we usually do a Stars and Cars event, and we'll have thousands of people come out. Remax hot air balloon, tents, and EPS are there. The ambulance is there. The fire trucks are there. It's a huge event, and people from all over are coming to attend it. So we have to look at doing other things this year to keep that momentum of our community and make sure everybody feels part of something bigger.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that event, I mean, LaPerle does a number of events, but I think that one has become so well known, not just even in the West End, but across the city, because like you say, when I attend, there's thousands of people coming from far and wide, because it's just grown and grown in such a short amount of time, which shows you the power of what the community leagues can do to help building up not just the neighborhood, but really the entire city. So
Well, and it really speaks, Andrew. I keep interrupting you.
No,
It
please.
really speaks to the volunteers involved, because the people that were involved in organizing Stars and Cars. I can't take any credit for that. I walked into it last year, being on that committee, but the organizing committee headed by Trevor, he's done a phenomenal job, and he's got a kind of a real good footprint of how that event looks like. So,
Absolutely.
and there's other people like that waiting to do events like that I'm welcome to talking to anybody that you want to put on an event as part of the LaPerle Community League. Call me. We'll make it happen, or we'll do our best.
Absolutely. Exactly. Well, before we wrap up, is there anything else you wanted to share? Any items that we should be covering before we close for the day?
I'm not sure if it's the right time in our conversation, but I do want to talk about crime.
Let's do it. Yeah.
We don't have a crime prevention team yet. We're trying to form one, and hopefully after the AGM, we've got a few names going forward. But there's instances of theft, and geographically, LaPerle is surrounded on two sides. One side by Anthony Henday, and the other by Stony Plain Road, where the berm is. And if you go for walks there's usually several tents. And unfortunate homeless people living back there, and quite a bit of garbage for that matter. But we need to have better tools for handling that, and we do get several complaints a week on our Nextdoor and on our Facebook of people trying door handles in the middle of the night, and people walking into garages and taking tools, and I think. Yeah, I mean, the more we communicate and the more we feel connected as a community, hopefully we can stem that and change that. But so is it the city? I guess my question for you, so we can put it out to everybody. What sorts of tools would you suggest, and what types of things would you suggest? As an example, people could do if they have a problem neighbor across the street that is either not taking care of their property, and I don't want this to be the you didn't mow your lawn to the right depth kind of thing. You know what I'm talking about, Andrew?
Exactly. Yeah. Where you have a property that is essentially derelict at that point, where you see people just a disregard for any type of contribution to the overall community. And so, yeah, it's something that when you think about that, there's a couple different pieces that I think you covered. And so when you think about what needs to happen as a community, it is important that, I know a number of people might attempt as sort of a first reach out. If they're finding they're having issues with a neighbor, something's not going right, more often than not, people will do an initial reach out because maybe something happened. I've remember different stories over the years where, every other year somebody had been shoveling their sidewalk, and then one year they stopped. And when somebody went up to the door, they found out, well, the person had a medical incident and they just physically can't do it, and they didn't have anyone to connect with. So sometimes it's legitimately somebody who just doesn't have somebody to reach out to. Maybe they don't have a family member or friend anymore that can help them. But sometimes, you run into situations where it's somebody who isn't like that, and they just are choosing to not really contribute to the community, who are choosing not to take care of what they're doing. And at which point, then it is important that people report things through 311. And I know that's not always, some people feel uncomfortable. It's like, I don't want to rat out my neighbor because they haven't shoveled. But there comes a point that if you've determined, hey, this person doesn't need medical assistance, they've just chosen not to help contribute, it is important because, our bylaw officers, we have a very large city to cover, and it is not possible for our bylaw officers to proactively go through every neighborhood to look at, if a yard's being maintained, if a walk's being shoveled. And they do rely on that report, and it is anonymous, so people can report that. Like the person that you're calling in about isn't going to hear it's about you, because some people worry about then creating a sort of lifelong enemy living on the same block. That I understand that could be a legitimate fear, and they don't have to worry about that if they were to call. And I think that's sort of your general starting point to help when you have people who maybe haven't been really working with the community to help build up what that community is trying to do. But then there's a separate set of issues that you talked about, which is that we've got many Edmonton, not many, but we have a large number of Edmontonians who are experiencing homelessness. And we are seeing it more so than any year before. These individuals who have moved out beyond the core, who are living in a lot of different park spaces, and most of them are people who are good human beings who just have, for whatever number of reasons, maybe they're dealing with mental health challenges, maybe they're dealing with addictions issues, are struggling, and that's the place they can be. You know, there's always a small percentage, but that's a category in whether it's people experiencing homelessness or just anyone. There are people who want to break the law too. And you have to separate those two out. So it's important that when we have worries about crime, people need to be reporting through to the EPS non-emergency line. We have EPS, likewise, with everything, they're also limited in resources. They can't do everything that they would like to do at all times. They can't have somebody down every street. So what they rely on are people to report suspicious activity into the non-emergency line, and based off call volumes is how they determine where they're deploying resources. So there's going to be some proactive patrols. They're going to be spending their time where they're hearing from a lot of people. The other thing that we're seeing is that EPS is going to be really focusing on that sort of community building work. And I know each of the divisions are going to have, and they have had in the past, dedicated community constables, but with Chief McPhee, I know he's sort of taking this to the next level of really trying to drive that part of work, that work home, because in the past, the goal was that EPS wanted to try to get 25% of all time being used towards proactive policing, which was great, except because every person had that same goal of 25%. The minute emergencies came up, they had to leave that. So I know his focus is to actually say, you know what, in order to hit 25%, you have to have some officers whose job 100% of the time is proactive policing, so that the other ones can focus on the response. And you'll end up at an average of 25, because we've never been hitting that average of 25. Right. So I think the next steps of what EPS is going to be doing through each of their divisions, so each community league can reach out to their nearest division and get connected with their new contact. And I know West Division's getting one set up, I think within the next couple of weeks, maybe even by the time this video is up, they'll be ready to go. And so they can always reach out to me to get that contact, because I know of some community leagues that what they do are annual conversations with the police. They have police come out to a community league meeting, as an example, to speak about what we all need to do, because it can't be exclusively on the police. We all have to work towards building up safety and making sure we're feeling comfortable. So there are things we can do, and I know EPS is going to be willing to do what's necessary to help address that. And I will note the final piece to the puzzle is that, you know, those folks who are experiencing homelessness, who are living on those green spaces, you know, this is a broader challenge that isn't, unfortunately, only within the city jurisdiction. Housing is primarily provincial and federal, but you've seen the city talk a lot about this over the years, because we know that with proper housing, we're going to be able to get the care and attention needed for each of these people. And in the long term, I mean, number one, that's just great, because we want everyone to have a home. But if we, for a moment, just look exclusively at a financial lens, we've seen that when we provide that permanent supportive housing in every community, because every community is going to need permanent supportive housing, but when you provide that permanent supportive housing, that 24/7 care, you actually save money, because the people who have those homes now and are getting the care they need aren't interacting with our healthcare system 200 nights out of the year in a hospital bed, which costs so much money and time. And so these are the things that we need to do, and that's not a problem we solve overnight, and it's unfortunately a problem that the city's been trying to make a lot of progress on over the years. Councillors Scott McKean and Michael Walters have led our housing initiative to really get to a point where we're ready to build. Now we just need the funding from the other two orders of government to start flowing. But I think there is one major role that I think every community league can play, because I've spoken about this at a number of our in-person town halls when I was able to do those. Mm-hmm. which is for every community to have some proactive conversations about permanent supportive housing. Because again, if we're going to do this, if we actually want to end homelessness, like we've talked about as a city, that means 16% of all housing units in every community will need to be some version of affordable. And that ranges from, you know, your 15% below market rates all the way to your permanent supportive housing where you're getting 24/7 care. And that can sometimes be uncomfortable for people. We've seen over the years where what has happened in the past at times is a proposal comes forward to a community and immediately everyone sort of gets their back up against the wall. And I think the better way to fix that is for all communities to say, we know this is going to happen in our neighborhoods because we all need to be part of this. So let's talk about it now and what we need to do. What are some of the things we feel we would need? So as we get different types of housing in our community, what are the services and amenities we need to make sure are there to support people that might live in those homes? Let's think about locations. Some locations or some communities already have a general idea. LaPerle has, and many people in LaPerle have seen that sign on the corner of 189th Street for years of a surplus school site. And we've talked about that in the past, and we'll talk about it again at future AGMs. But there's a lot of other communities where we don't have that general idea of where housing would go just yet. And so I think there's a role for communities to play to start talking about this in a more proactive way, engaging the residents to say, this is something we're all going to be working on, and we need affordable housing in my neighborhood, we need affordable housing in your neighborhood, we need affordable housing in every neighborhood. And that really begins to change things, especially as the money starts to come from the other orders of government to build the units. So sorry, I gave a really long answer to your question because
you sure did, yeah.
multiple pieces there. But I think having these types of conversations, not just one-on-one, but as a broader community, is something we can do, I think, to get us ready for those next steps.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
My pleasure. Well, anything else that you think that you'd like to cover?
You know, I think that let me just look, because I posed some questions to my board when I knew I was talking to you.
Perfect.
To make sure that we've covered everything off. But no, I think that really does it. I obviously, as things improve, we're hoping to see soccer pick up again, and I know a lot of people would love to be using our fields for that again. And I know you can't probably speak to that at this point because that's an EMSA thing, but.
Yeah, and we're still almost every restriction that's still in place, they're primarily defined by the province at this point. So the reintroduction of team sports, the reopening of our rec facilities, we're all waiting for word from the province, even things like libraries. So as we get more information, I'll be sure to share it with everyone, both through my social media and then obviously it gets shared through all the other groups. So just want to say thank you again, Bill, for taking the time, and thank you for the leadership you've shown, not just during the pandemic, but before. But I know in particular, you've been, again, I think I used that term, beacon of hope, that a lot of people have been, waiting for that Books with Bill, waiting to see those window decorations. And I just thank you for stepping up and helping out, not just residents of LaPerle, because I know residents of LaPerle benefited, but I know people from across the West End and across the city have seen the work that you're doing. And so I want to thank you for everything you've done, and as well the rest of the board on LaPerle who have stepped in to fill gaps, and just residents who aren't part of the board who have stepped up in different ways, as you talked about earlier. So thank you all for that great work.
Oh, no problem. I think it takes a village in this case to, a village to raise a child is the expression, but in this case, I'm nothing without everybody else that is contributing. So all of my viewers, which equals my sister and my mom, and you, I appreciate that too.
Well, thank you so much, and we will stay in touch. And thanks everyone for joining us for this conversation again with Bill Bowers from the LaPerle Community League. And stay tuned for many more videos over the time here. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.